Hey gardeners, welcome back to my channel. So in today's video I am joined by Vendetta, my boa constrictor, who is probably trying to escape right now into the plant. But in today's video I don't really have a layout or anything. It's basically just a discussion and I'm sharing my opinion on the matter of animal hoarding when it comes to keeping reptiles. So I wanted to talk about this subject because I feel as though it's very important when it comes to reptile keeping in particular, because when it comes to keeping reptiles, people that keep reptiles tend to keep a very large number of them because they are so small and they're easy to take care of, and people like to do the racking system and things like that, and it's so easy to just keep accumulating animals, and I think reptiles can actually be very addicting. Usually when people think of an animal hoarder, they think of like the show where these people just have all of these like dying dead animals and they're all just like stacked up in cages and they're just literally in the worst possible condition, and it has to get to that condition to be considered an animal hoarder. And I personally don't find that that is the only term. I don't think it's so black and white. I think that it is very common for there to be a mild form of hoarding when it comes to reptile keeping in the hobby, and people tend to think that it's normal. I feel as though it's normalized because all of the reptile keepers think that it's so easy to take all of these animals on, and they kind of brag about it and it's like a numbers game, and I just don't like that idea of thinking whatsoever. So when people are keeping reptiles, it honestly does become a lifestyle choice because there are things that you need to keep in mind before you get reptiles. When you start accumulating a lot of reptiles, you will notice that a lot of your time has to be devoted to these animals, and you really can't slack on that whatsoever. You can't really travel as much either because you can't leave your animals behind unless you have someone else to take care of them for you. So there's just a lot that goes into it, and every single person is different. They have different things going on in their lives, and basically everyone has their own limitations. Most important thing is to have true self-awareness and know your limitations. For me personally, I do have a lot of animals and I am able to make that work because I'm home every single day. I don't work another job other than like dog walking and YouTube videos, so I am with these animals for the majority of my time, which is very necessary because I have so many and they definitely need the attention. Even though they are reptiles and people say, oh, you don't have to feed them every single day, it doesn't matter because you should be checking on your animals' well-being every single day to make sure that everything is on point. If you aren't able to do this, you may be in over your head. A lot of people work during the day, they work like 5 days a week. It may not be the best idea to have a ton of animals if you're working all the time and you're not able to be there for your animals or prioritize that time for them. Vendetta, where are you going? I know, you just want to go in that plant so badly. I am so sorry that I'm disrupting your plant time. For me personally, because I'm home all the time, I am able to take care of a lot of animals. However, I do have my own limitations because I do have Crohn's disease, I do have low energy, I do have days where I feel like absolute garbage and I can't do much. So I need to keep that into consideration when I accumulate my own animals because I need to make sure that all of my animals are getting everything that they need. So as I mentioned earlier, I do believe that there is a mild form of animal hoarding all the time when it comes to reptile keeping. And that basically just comes down to the people not being able to give their animals every single thing that they need because they have so many of them. A lot of people like to brag when it comes to reptile keeping and be like, oh, I have this huge number. And I'm not about that at all. I think that if you have just like a couple of reptiles or something and you go all out, that's way more impressive than keeping a huge number. When it comes to reptile keeping, I personally think that quality over quantity is so much more important. I don't really like this new culture idea of these people saying like, look, I'm feeding my 53 reptiles or whatever it is. Like my last reptile room tour video, I've decided not to share numbers anymore just because I don't like the idea or the stigma attached to it. I don't think that people should have to think that if they want to keep reptiles, they have to own a certain amount to be like cool or something or more validated. It's just not healthy, and I don't think it's a good standard to set either. So I honestly think that quality is so much more important than quantity. If you only have a couple of reptiles, you could be a better keeper than someone that keeps like 100 of them, just because you're able to give them more of the time and attention that they need and give them better enclosures. And you're just keeping a better eye on those animals to make sure that they're healthy and thriving in captivity with you, which is so important. That's the entire point of keeping them in the first place. do understand that it's so easy to keep so many of them because people do the racking systems and they just have the space and they're able to just keep getting them. But the question is, are you really enjoying those animals, or are they just there? Are you just like bragging about a number, or are you actually going all out for every single one of those individual animals and giving them the best life possible? Because I think that's what's most important. So I'm not trying to just say that everyone that keeps a large number of reptiles is an animal hoarder. I'm just saying that personally, I've noticed there are a lot of cases where people do keep a lot of reptiles. They aren't giving them everything that they need, and they're bragging about a numbers game. And I do think that that is a little mild form of animal hoarding, and it's not beneficial for the animals, and it's not something that should be promoted, especially in the pet industry. So I filmed earlier in the day today, and I've been thinking more about this subject, and I want to add there are 5 things that I would like to see change in the future when it comes to keeping reptiles and potentially hoarding them. So after thinking about this, I've decided to refilm again today and add this to the video. So, and yeah, I don't have Vendetta right now because I don't want to annoy him for a second time today. So at least you got to see him earlier. So there are some changes that I would like to see in the future regarding people and animal hoarding their reptiles. So I'm going to go over some of those changes that I would like to see. So the first change that I want to see is for people to stop bragging about the number of reptiles that they have. I also see a lot of people using this as an argument, saying that they have basically more validity for taking care of their animals because they have such a large amount of them. That doesn't really mean anything. That just means you have a lot to handle, and that doesn't really mean that you have the knowledge or experience to do so either. So I just really don't want it to be a numbers game anymore, and I really wish I could see people bragging less about how many reptiles they have, as if it makes them cooler or more valid as a reptile keeper. Second change that I would like to see are for people to stop buying reptiles spontaneously because they are easy to take care of, because this always happens. If someone gets one crested gecko, they're like, okay, this is easy to take care of, so I'm just going to spontaneously keep buying them. Obviously, it's irresponsible to buy an animal spontaneously, especially if you don't have the enclosure set up and everything that you already need to take care of that animal, or you haven't done research. That would be a terrible decision. So spontaneously buying reptiles is just never a good idea. The third change that I would like to see is for people to actually stop buying reptiles to mask their emotional issues, because it seems like a lot of people buy animals because it does become this sort of addiction and people are unhappy with their lives. So they get this like high from getting new animals, and it's never a good thing for those animals because you're just accumulating a ton of animals and then you aren't going to be able to properly provide for those animals. So it's ultimately not fair to them. And that's a change that I would like to see in the future, because people tend to think that because they have personal issues, it gives them like a valid reason to get more reptiles. And I think that that's just very irresponsible. Number 4, the change that I would like to see is for people to stop buying reptiles when they don't have the space, the time, or the money to take care of those animals for their entire life. It is very common that you will see someone just go to a reptile show or something and they buy a baby Savannah monitor or a boa constrictor. And yeah, it's much easier to take care of a baby. They don't require much space. But you need to keep in mind that that animal is not always going to be that size. They may grow to be maybe 10 plus feet, depending on what animal you're getting. That's going to cost you a lot of money and a lot of space in the future. So that's something that always needs to be taken into consideration before getting an animal. And the 5th change that I would like to see is for people to stop shading other people for downsizing their collection of animals, because I think that it's the responsible choice to downsize. If you feel you're in over your head, or maybe things have changed, you don't have the money to support your animals, you don't have the space anymore, whatever the case may be, you lose your job, you're sick, whatever it is, if you have a valid reason and you want to give your animals a better home, there's no reason to look down on that person for doing that, because they're being a responsible pet owner and they're making sure that their animal is going to have a better life somewhere else if they aren't able to provide it themselves. So people should really stop shading those people. Yes, it's irresponsible if someone's just buying animals just to have them temporarily and then get rid of them. That's obviously not something that I would support. But if someone truly has animals and they feel that they can't provide for them and they want someone else to do it instead to guarantee them a good life, there's no reason to look at that person negative for that situation. So these are my thoughts on this entire topic. So I would love to hear what you guys think about all of this. Please leave it in a comment. Let me know your thoughts. And thank you guys so much for listening to me rant today, and I will see you guys in the next video.